Mexican president has defended the military operation that captured a drug cartel leader, Ovidio Guzman.
America's war on Mexican cartels is getting wild. From secret spy operations to jaw-dropping drone strikes, Uncle Sam isn't playing nice anymore. Drug lords who once seemed untouchable are now looking over their shoulders as U.S. forces use explosive tactics that most people don't even know about. The body count is rising, billions are being spent, and the border has never been more tense. Want to know what's really happening? Keep watching. Special Forces teams operating in secret. The U.S. has been sending elite military teams across the border for years, but they don't want you to know about it. These aren't just regular soldiers, they're the best of the best, trained to move like ghosts and strike without warning. Navy SEALs, Delta Force, and other special ops groups slip into Mexico wearing civilian clothes and carrying unmarked weapons. They work alongside trusted Mexican military units to track down cartel leaders, gathering intel and planning raids that often turn deadly. What makes these operations so powerful is how they stay under the radar. Unlike big military actions that make headlines, these missions happen quietly, sometimes without even the Mexican government knowing all the details. The teams use advanced technology like thermal drones that can spot people hiding in buildings, satellite phones that can't be traced, and facial recognition software that can pick out a wanted drug boss in a crowded street. When they find their target, they move fast, usually at night when the cartels least expect it. The results are impressive but messy. Several top cartel leaders have mysteriously disappeared or been killed in operations that seem too professional for local police. The U.S. government rarely admits involvement, instead letting Mexico take credit for these wins. Meanwhile, cartels have put bounties on American agents they suspect are operating in their territory. The danger is real. Several U.S. operatives have been killed in Mexico over the years, their deaths quietly classified, and their families told little about what really happened. This shadow war continues daily, with American boots on Mexican soil in what amounts to an undeclared invasion that both governments publicly deny but privately support. Drone surveillance networks that never sleep. The skies above Mexico are never empty. At any given moment, dozens of U.S. drones circle silently over cartel territory, watching everything that happens below. These aren't your regular drones. They're military-grade machines that can stay airborne for days, equipped with cameras so powerful they can read a text message on someone's phone from thousands of feet up. The U.S. has built an invisible net of surveillance that catches everything from drug shipments to secret meetings between cartel bosses. What makes this system so destructive to cartels is its endless patience. Cartel leaders might spot a drone once and hide, but they can't stay hidden forever. The drones just keep watching, day after day, building patterns of life, where someone sleeps, eats, who they meet, where their kids go to school. All this information feeds into massive computer systems that use artificial intelligence to predict where targets will be. When the time is right, either Mexican forces or U.S. operators swoop in for the kill or capture. The psychological impact is devastating for cartel members. They know they're being watched but can't tell when or by what. Some cartels have started using anti-drone technology bought from the black market, shooting down what they think are U.S. drones, only to have new ones replace them hours later. Other cartels have gone old school, using tunnels and caves to hide from the eyes in the sky. But the drone network keeps expanding, with newer models that can see through clouds, detect heat signatures of people hiding in buildings, and even identify specific individuals by the way they walk. This endless surveillance has forced cartels to constantly change tactics, making their operations less efficient and more expensive to run. Following the money trail. Like bloodhounds. The U.S. knows that bullets alone won't stop cartels as long as billions of dollars keep flowing. That's why some of America's most destructive attacks aren't carried out with guns, but with financial weapons. Teams of accountants, lawyers, and banking experts work around the clock to follow dirty money as it moves through global financial systems. When they find it, They don't just freeze it, they seize it completely, draining cartel accounts overnight and leaving drug lords suddenly broke. The Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, works like a financial hit squad, blacklisting businesses, banks, and even seemingly legitimate companies tied to cartels. Once a business gets put on their list, it's effectively dead. No American can do business with it, and most foreign companies won't touch it either. What makes this approach so clever is that it targets not just obvious cartel members, but their helpers in suits, the accountants, real estate developers, and business owners who launder their money. These people aren't prepared for the kind of heat that drug dealers expect, and they often crack under pressure. The U.S. has frozen billions in cartel assets over the years, from luxury apartments in New York to horse ranches in Texas, from restaurant chains in Mexico City to shipping companies in Colombia. They've even seized private jets, yachts, and car collections worth millions. This financial warfare forces cartels to use riskier ways to move money, like physically smuggling cash across borders, which is bulky and easy to catch. Some cartels have turned to cryptocurrency, but U.S. agencies have gotten better at tracking those transactions too. Without easy access to their money, cartels struggle to pay their soldiers, bribe officials, and buy weapons, weakening them from the inside out in ways bullets never could. Training Mexican forces to do America's dirty work. Instead of sending large numbers of its own troops into Mexico, the U.S. has created something potentially more powerful. Mexican units that think, train, and fight like Americans. These aren't regular Mexican police or soldiers. They're elite squads handpicked for loyalty and effectiveness, then transformed through intensive U.S. training programs. The Americans provide everything: weapons that match or exceed what cartels carry, tactical gear that costs more than what most Mexican officers earn in a year, and training facilities where they learn the same techniques used by U.S. Special Forces. The genius of this approach is that it gives the U.S. fighting power in Mexico without the political mess of sending in American troops. These Mexican units become extensions of American power, often with U.S. advisors embedded with them or directing operations from nearby. They run raids based on intelligence collected by U.S. satellites and drones, using tactics developed in Afghanistan and Iraq. Some units even train at American military bases before returning to Mexico to use what they've learned against the cartels. The results have been mixed but powerful. These elite units have captured or killed dozens of high-ranking cartel members in operations that show clear American fingerprints. Precise night raids, coordinated multi-location strikes, and the kind of tactical discipline not commonly seen in regular Mexican forces. But there's a dark side, too. Some of these units have been accused of human rights violations, operating outside normal Mexican legal restrictions, and in some cases eventually being corrupted by the very cartels they were trained to fight. Despite these problems, the U.S. continues to expand these programs, seeing them as a cost-effective way to project force across the border without actually crossing it with large military units. Weaponizing border security against cartel operations. The U.S.-Mexico border has transformed from a simple line in the sand into one of the world's most heavily monitored security zones, specifically designed to crush cartel operations. The border now features military-grade surveillance equipment that would make most countries jealous, underground sensors that can detect footsteps, towers with thermal cameras that can spot people miles away in complete darkness, and AI systems that can identify suspicious behavior patterns before humans even notice them. What makes this border strategy so effective against cartels is its layered approach. Even if drugs or people make it past the physical barriers, they face a gauntlet of checkpoints, patrol vehicles, and even predator drones watching from above. The Border Patrol has expanded into a paramilitary force with helicopters, armed vehicle units, and tactical teams that operate more like soldiers than police. They're backed by intelligence centers where analysts sift through massive amounts of data looking for patterns that might reveal cartel smuggling routes or safe houses. The economic damage this does to cartels is enormous. Drug loads worth millions get seized daily. Smuggling costs have skyrocketed as cartels need more people, more equipment, and more elaborate schemes to get their products across. They're forced to dig increasingly complex tunnels, build makeshift submarines, and even use drones of their own. All expensive operations with high failure rates. Some cartels have shifted to producing drugs like fentanyl, which is so potent that much smaller amounts need to be smuggled to make the same profit. But even this adaptation comes with risks, as smaller packages are easier to produce but can still be detected by specialized equipment at ports of entry. The border has become such a costly battlefield that some cartels have diversified into other crimes like extortion and kidnapping inside Mexico, rather than risk the increasingly militarized American frontier. Chemical warfare against drug production. Rather than just fighting cartel members, the U.S. has taken the fight directly to the crops and labs that produce their product. For decades, American-funded planes have sprayed chemicals over drug fields in Mexico and other Latin American countries, destroying coca, marijuana, and poppy crops from above. These aren't gentle weed killers, they're industrial-strength chemicals that kill everything they touch, designed to make land unusable for drug production for months or even years. The scale of this chemical campaign is massive. Millions of acres have been sprayed, often in remote mountain areas where cartels thought their crops were safe. The spray planes come with helicopter gunships for protection, swooping low over fields to release clouds of chemicals that destroy a season's worth of drug crops in minutes. U.S. satellite technology identifies new growing areas, directing the spray planes to targets that cartel farmers thought were well hidden. This forces drug producers to constantly move, breaking up established operations and making production more expensive and less efficient. Beyond crop destruction, the U.S. has also targeted drug processing facilities by tracking the chemicals needed to make drugs like cocaine and meth. These precursor chemicals are mostly legitimate industrial products with tracking systems that American agents can monitor. America's war on cartel drug production unleashes industrial-strength chemicals from the sky, transforming lush drug fields into barren wasteland. Military-grade herbicides rain down from specialized aircraft protected by armed helicopters, destroying vast marijuana plantations and poppy fields that took months to cultivate. In minutes, cartels watch millions in potential profits wither and die. These chemicals don't just kill plants, they poison soil for seasons, making replanting impossible. U.S. satellite technology spots new growing operations within days, directing spray planes to targets farmers thought were hidden in remote mountains or dense jungle. This forces constant relocation, breaking established growing patterns and driving production into increasingly marginal lands with lower yield. Meanwhile, DEA chemists analyze seized drugs to identify manufacturing signatures, tracing precursor chemicals to their source. The U.S. pressures chemical companies worldwide to track suspicious purchases, turning legitimate industrial products into monitored substances. When unusual shipments appear in cartel territory, raids follow. Sophisticated labs worth millions get dismantled overnight, forcing cartels to build smaller, less efficient operations that produce inferior products at higher costs. When unusual patterns appear, like large shipments of certain chemicals to areas with no legitimate industry, raids often follow. The DEA has trained Mexican authorities to identify and safely dismantle drug labs, which often contain dangerous chemicals that can explode or release toxic fumes. By attacking the production side, the U.S. forces cartels to spend more money protecting their operations, building smaller, less efficient labs that are harder to find but produce less product. This chemical warfare strategy has pushed much of the drug production deeper into the jungle and further from the U.S. border, making the entire supply chain more complex and vulnerable. Information warfare and psychological operations. The U.S. fights cartels not just with bullets, but with information, running sophisticated campaigns to turn the Mexican public against cartel members and break down the organizations from within. American agencies create and fund media campaigns showing the real damage cartels do to communities. The dead bodies, the addicted children, the destroyed families. They sponsor billboards offering massive rewards for information leading to cartel leaders' capture, often displaying their faces like wanted posters across major Mexican cities. More secretively, U.S. intelligence agencies plant stories in local newspapers about cartel leaders stealing from their own men or informing on their partners. Whether true or not, these stories sow seeds of doubt and paranoia within cartel ranks. They also create anonymous tip lines where people can safely report cartel activities, then make sure everyone knows when those tips lead to major arrest, encouraging more people to come forward. The goal is to break the code of silence that protects cartels and make members constantly suspicious of each other. America's invisible war against Mexican cartels weaponizes information to devastating effect. U.S. agencies seed Mexican media with stories highlighting cartel atrocities, undermining the Robin Hood image some organizations cultivate. Billboard campaigns display cartel leaders' faces with massive reward offers, transforming neighborhoods into hostile territory where anyone might betray them for life-changing money. More insidiously, intelligence operatives plant false rumors within cartel ranks, whispers that certain lieutenants are skimming profits or secretly cooperating with authorities. These fabrications, whether believed or not, force leadership to waste resources investigating their own people while sowing distrust throughout the organization. The psychological pressure extends to cartel families living luxurious lives abroad. U.S. authorities track down children attending elite international schools, spouses shopping on Rodeo Drive, and parents receiving medical treatment in American hospitals. Visas get mysteriously revoked. Bank accounts freeze without warning. The message becomes clear. No one connected to cartel life remains beyond reach, creating unbearable pressure on leaders whose families suddenly face consequences they thought money could prevent. Some of the most effective psychological operations target cartel members' families. U.S. intelligence identifies where cartel leaders send their children to school, often expensive private institutions in the U.S. or Europe, then works with those countries to revoke visas or create legal problems for these family members. They freeze bank accounts used to pay for luxury apartments where cartel families live away from the violence in Mexico. This pressure on families has caused some cartel leaders to surrender or become informants to protect their loved ones. The U.S. also offers generous witness protection deals to cartel members who turn on their bosses, creating a constant fear among leadership that someone close might betray them. This atmosphere of distrust makes cartels less efficient and more prone to internal conflicts, as no one knows who might be working with the Americans. Technology that leaves nowhere to hide. The technological gap between U.S. law enforcement and Mexican cartels grows wider every year. American agencies now use tools that seem straight out of science fiction movies, making it nearly impossible for cartel members to communicate or move without being detected. The NSA can intercept almost any phone call or text message, even from encrypted phones that cartels believe are secure. They use voice recognition software that can identify specific cartel leaders in seconds, even if they try to disguise their voice or use someone else's phone. Location tracking has reached scary levels of precision. The U.S. can now track vehicles with satellite technology that doesn't require any device to be placed on the car. They can identify specific people by how they walk, the unique pattern of veins in their faces, visible with special cameras, or even by how they type on a keyboard. Some cartels have tried going old school using written messages and face-to-face meetings, but even these aren't safe. U.S. agencies have developed long-distance microphones that can hear conversations through walls and windows from hundreds of yards away. The technological arsenal America deploys against Mexican cartels resembles science fiction made real. Satellites track vehicles without physical trackers, while advanced AI systems predict smuggling routes by analyzing thousands of variables from weather patterns to border staffing schedules. NSA tools crack encrypted cartel communications, capturing messages some leaders believed untouchable. Voice recognition software identifies specific individuals in seconds, even on burner phones or through voice disguisers. Thermal imaging drones detect hidden underground bunkers and tunnels by sensing slight temperature differences from the air. Even cartel members who abandon technology find themselves exposed. Long-range microphones capture conversations through walls from hundreds of yards away. Facial recognition systems identify targets in crowds by the unique patterns of veins beneath their skin, visible only with specialized cameras. The psychological impact devastates cartel operations. Leaders become increasingly paranoid, abandoning efficient methods for primitive alternatives. Operations move at glacial pace as cartels implement elaborate security protocols that ultimately fail against America's technological juggernaut, creating an overwhelming sense that nowhere is truly safe. Perhaps most frightening for cartels is the growing use of predictive technology. Using artificial intelligence systems fed with years of intelligence data, U.S. agencies can now predict with surprising accuracy where shipments might go, which routes smugglers might take, and even which cartel members might be planning to betray their bosses. These systems analyze thousands of factors, from weather patterns to border checkpoint staffing levels to which soccer teams are playing on a given weekend, to identify when and where cartels are likely to move drugs or money. This lets American and Mexican authorities position their resources in the right place at the right time, making the cartels feel like the Americans can read their minds. The psychological impact of seemingly always being one step behind has made cartel operations increasingly paranoid and inefficient, turning cartel members against each other. One of America's most destructive tactics doesn't involve weapons at all, but instead exploits the greed and fear that runs through cartel organizations. U.S. agencies have mastered the art of turning cartel members into informants, creating a hidden network of spies within the criminal organizations themselves. They offer deals that are hard to refuse, reduced sentences for those facing life in prison, new identities in America for them and their families, and sometimes millions of dollars for information leading to major busts or the capture of kingpins. The strategy works because cartel life is already filled with distrust and danger. Many members join out of necessity rather than loyalty and live in constant fear of their bosses. American agents identify vulnerable people within cartels, often those who have family in the U.S. or who have shown signs of wanting out, and approach them carefully with offers that address their specific fears and desires. Once one person flips, they help identify others who might be willing to cooperate, creating a domino effect that can hollow out an entire cartel from within. America's most devastating weapon against Mexican cartels isn't bullets or raids, it's betrayal. U.S. agencies have mastered the art of flipping cartel insiders into informants through irresistible offers. Freedom from prison, new identities in suburban America, and million-dollar payouts for high-value intelligence. This strategy exploits the fear already endemic in cartel life. DEA and FBI agents target vulnerable members, those with families in the U.S. or showing signs of disillusionment, approaching them with tailored deals addressing their specific fears. Once one member flips, they identify others who might follow. The resulting paranoia tears cartels apart from within. After unexplained arrests or seized shipments, witch hunts erupt as bosses desperately search for traitors. Innocent members face torture on mere suspicion. Operations stall as trust evaporates. Some cartels implement extreme loyalty tests, forcing recruits to commit brutal acts or submit to constant surveillance, creating even more resentment and pushing more informants into American hands. What makes this approach particularly devastating is how it spreads paranoia through cartel ranks. When major busts happen or leaders get arrested, no one knows for sure who provided the information. This leads to witch hunts within the organization, with innocent people often tortured or killed based on mere suspicion. Veteran cartel members become reluctant to bring in new recruits since they can't be sure who to trust. Operations slow down as everyone watches everyone else. Some cartels have resorted to extreme measures to prevent infiltration, forcing new members to kill family members to prove loyalty or subjecting everyone to regular lie detector tests. These desperate measures create even more resentment and fear, making more people willing to risk talking to American agents. The result is organizations that spend as much energy watching their own people as they do fighting their enemies or running their businesses. Targeting cartel leaders to create chaos. The U.S. has embraced a strategy focused on cutting off the head of the snake, identifying and removing cartel leadership through capture or killing. This approach, sometimes called the Kingpin strategy, has become America's signature move against Mexican drug organizations. When a major cartel leader is identified, massive resources are directed toward finding them. Satellite surveillance, phone tapping, informant networks, and specialized hunting teams that do nothing but track one person, sometimes for years. When these high-value targets are found, the operations to take them down are planned with military precision. If the target is to be captured alive, usually preferred so they can provide intelligence, U.S.-trained Mexican special forces, or in some cases actual American operators, conduct lightning raids designed to overwhelm security before the target can escape. These aren't random busts. They come after months of watching routines, identifying weaknesses in security, and rehearsing every detail. Some captures happen so fast that cartel leaders don't even have time to call for help. The U.S. strategy of hunting down cartel kingpins has transformed Mexico's criminal landscape. When American intelligence identifies a cartel boss, they unleash a full arsenal of surveillance tech and specialist teams that track every move until the perfect moment to strike. These precision raids often happen in seconds. Elite forces swoop in at dawn, catching leaders in bed before bodyguards can react. But the real destruction comes afterward. When a boss disappears, the power vacuum triggers immediate bloodshed. Ambitious lieutenants turn on each other, splintering organizations into warring factions. Carefully maintained corruption networks collapse. Safe houses, smuggling routes, and money stashes become lost secrets or prizes to be fought over. While this chaos might seem counterproductive, it serves American interests by keeping cartels disorganized and focused on internal battles rather than expanding operations. The violence is horrific but predictable, a calculated consequence of America's kingpin strategy. What makes this strategy particularly destructive isn't just removing the leader, but the chaos that follows. When a cartel boss suddenly disappears, the carefully maintained power structure collapses. Lieutenants who once worked together now fight for control, often violently. Alliances with other cartels or corrupt officials fall apart. The organization's institutional knowledge, who to bribe, which routes are safe, where money is stored, gets fragmented or lost. In the power vacuum, smaller groups break away to form their own organizations, leading to more violence as territory gets contested. Government forces take advantage of the confusion to roll up lower-level operators who suddenly lack protection or direction. The result is often not the end of the cartel, but its transformation into something more fragmented and chaotic. Sometimes even more violent than before, but typically less effective at large-scale drug trafficking and less able to challenge state authority directly. Thanks for watching another episode. While you are still here, make sure to click on the video on your screen for more quality content.